Hello and welcome dear viewers to the interesting topic on critical material attributes and excipient functionality. This topic belongs to the formulation development and quality by design, and the topic is having its importance in the research and development, in the quality control, in production, and also in the quality assurance, including the regulatory affairs. These are the departments which deal with these topics, and their day-to-day function or day-to-day work involves these terminologies. So starting from the research and development, the critical material attributes and the excipients functionality is to be understood in detail. So critical material attributes, these are abbreviated as CMAs, and excipients functionality characteristics, that is called as functionality related characteristics. So that is called as FRCs. And being in the pharmaceutical profession, we should understand these terminologies in detail. So let's start with the video. In this video, we are going to study these terminologies in detail. Now, the formulation is made up of the active drug substance or active pharmaceutical ingredient, that is drug substance, and the other raw materials which are known as excipients or the inert raw materials. And what is the role of these inert raw materials in the formulation? So simply, for giving the required characteristics to the formulation, so only API cannot be manufactured into the finished formulation. That's why to have the property of manufacturability, these excipients are used. For having the desired quality attributes for the formulation, these excipients are used. And each excipient in the formulation has its own unique role or unique function. So these raw materials are added into the formulation or selected for developing a formulation or manufacturing a formulation based on some characteristics and the requirements. For example, if you are working or if you are developing a formulation of tablet, simply immediate release tablet you are going to manufacture, and for that you need API, then you will need diluent, you will need binder, or if the process is wet granulation, then you will need binder, you will need granulating solvent. Then for tablet formulation you will need disintegrant, lubricants and gliders. If the formulation is coated tablet, that time film coating material will be required. So why these materials are taken into the formulation? Because only API cannot be formulated into a tablet, because API may not be having the flow properties, and that's why it is very difficult to make the tablet of API. Then if you make the tablets of only API, then it is not likely that it will disintegrate, it will be manufactured on a large scale with manufacturing ease. So these materials are added, and again each material has its own unique role into the formulation. and that role or that function of the material is based on the property which make it to be used into the formulation. If you are using binder for tablet formulation, then that binder is having a property of binding the material together, and that property may be its viscosity, and that viscosity makes that excipient to be used as binder. For example, if you are using povidone as a binder into the tablet formulation, so the viscosity is the preliminary requirement of binder to be used, and that viscosity is the key important material attribute or key property, and based on that viscosity property, the binder or that raw material function as a binder into the formulation. The quantity and level and the critical properties of the excipients affect the product. Affect the product means that critical property of the raw material or excipient affect the manufacturability, processability, and also the critical quality attributes of that formulation. For example, disintegrant. The swelling property of the disintegrant is important for disintegration of the tablet. That means it will affect the disintegration time, and in turn it will affect the dissolution, and dissolution in turn will affect the in vivo response. So see how these properties are important. That's why these are known as critical material attributes and functionality related characteristics. Examples of the critical material attributes we will see as a particle size of the API. PSD of API affects the manufacturing process parameters, flow properties, homogeneity, and dissolution, along with the in vivo performance. So API particle size will affect the CPPs and CQs of the formulation. Thus, PSD is the CMA of API, and CMA, that means critical material attribute, has an impact on to the formulation performance. So if you consider critical material attribute and if you consider the excipient functionality, then you will come to know that these are the similar terminologies, and you can study these two as together. Next is the viscosity of the binder affects the granulation process and process parameters and the dissolution. If you take a highly viscous binder, it will be very difficult to pour that binder or to spray that binder or to add that binder into the dry mix. So the granulation process is affected, and if you select highly viscous binder, then it will impact on the dissolution. So these CMAs affect the CPPs and the CQs. Thickness of the packaging material of blister foil affects the packaging parameters, and its MVTR thus affect the product stability. So moisture vapor transmission rate, if you consider for the blister depending on its thickness, then you will understand that MVTR is the CMA of the blister which affects the product stability. Packaging material also have CMAs. Then the functionality related characteristics. So these are the property or characteristic of the excipient that affects the product CQs and CPPs. In simple meaning, it impacts the product quality and required specifications. So if the tablet example is for effervescent tablet, and if the disintegrant or the acid base combination is used for effervescence, and if the material used as a disintegrant is not working properly, then the effervescent property of that formulation will be lost. The CMAs are required to be controlled as the variations in CMA will impact the product CQS. Now see, if the CMAs are varying, then these variations into the CMAs of material will have impact on the product performance. That is the product CQS. CQS are nothing but these are the critical quality attributes like assay, dissolution, stability or impurity profiling, and the intended use. Intended use means, like I have given an example of effervescent tablet. If effervescent tablet is not showing any effervescence, then that intended use will be affected. In totality, the functionality of the excipients means its physical, chemical or other properties which makes it unique for the requirement for product and intended process. If you are using flavor into the formulation, and if that flavor or flavoring material lost its flavor, then will a formulation get formulated with a good flavor? So certainly it is not. If the flavoring agent is not having suitable flavor, or if the taste masking agent is not working or functioning properly because of the property which makes that material to be used into the formulation, then you can think that the material is not worth to be used into the formulation. So the functionality related characteristics are the properties which make that material suitable to be used for the intended function into the formulation. If you are using a solubility enhancing material for some of the formulation, and if it is not able to solubilize the API, or if it is not able to provide the required dissolution, then that material cannot be used or cannot be used for function as a dissolution enhancement or solubility enhancement agent. So shortly, these functionality related characteristics or CMAs are nothing but these are the similar terminologies, and these two terminologies are there for developing a product from initial level. These are the required characteristics. Another example is the use of magnesium stearate in lubrication process because of its particle size. Magnesium stearate is a slippery type of material. It is used as a lubricant in lubrication stage to improve the flow and to improve the tableting, so that sticking and picking of the formulation material or blend to the machine punches and tooling is avoided, and its function depends on its particle size. That's why the magnesium stearate is available in the normal grade and also in the micronized grade. Now see, the particle size affects its surface area. So the magnesium stearate particle size and the surface area are the two important CMAs. FRCs affect the product specific critical quality requirements and the specifications. FRCs are the CQA of excipients. Now see, FRC are the CQA of the excipients. If you are going to purchase magnesium stearate with some specific particle size, and if you found that it is not having that specific particle size, then you will say that this magnesium stearate cannot be used. Why? Because it is failing in that CQA. So FRCs are the CQAs of excipients, and these FRCs are going to impact the CQAs of formulation. These FRCs or CMAs are the quality parameters for the excipients. The CMAs are required to be studied from initial stage of the development and include the risk assessment. The process and formulation to be studied with varying CMAs and their impact onto the process and product CQAs. API PhD impact the content uniformity and dissolution. API polymorph impact the stability of the formulation and the dissolution. Also, the critical material attribute can have wide impact. For example, polymorph may have impact onto the stability, solubility, dissolution, and processability. So one CMA may have different impacts. The physical properties, chemical properties, solid state properties, these are the properties which are CMAs or FRCs. Many times you may find that the material is available in different grades. So if you ask the supplier that how these grades are differing with each other, then that supplier will tell you that the difference in the grade is because of their particle size or surface area or viscosity or molecular weight. So these differences or grades are based on to the CMAs, and also you can say that the functionality related characteristics. So physical properties and grades, particle size distribution, that is PSD, bulk density, particle shape, morphology, flow properties. Some materials are freely flowing, some materials are co-processed. So different properties will be there. Then physical properties will include surface area, specific surface area, wetting properties, hygroscopicity, loss on drying, that is LOD, viscosity levels and the grades, molecular weights. So many physical properties are there which are the CMAs. Then solid state properties. These are the polymorphic properties. These include polymorphs, polymorphic forms, amorphous form, hydrate form, solvent form, salt form for the APIs. So these differ by the solid state properties. These are the CMAs and the FRCs. Then chemical properties and grades. So some chemical properties are the CMAs and FRCs. Content of some functional group in the chemical, ratio of functional groups, degree of polymerization and substitution. So if you work with the polymers, certainly you will know the grades of the polymers are based on the functional groups, the substitution levels, and the polymerization. The polymers like HPC, HPMC, and carbopoles are used widely in the pharmaceutical formulations. Then these FRCs and CMAs are to be included into the certificate of analysis. There should be a specific control strategy for controlling these CMAs and FRCs. And the monographs from the pharmacopoeias should be studied in detail for the levels and acceptance criteria for the FRCs. If you go through the monograph of excipients, you will get those tests which are critical for that excipient. If you check the monograph of magnesium stearate, you will find the particle size, you will find the surface area. Then similarly for talc, in the monograph functionality related characteristics test is the section, and many of the excipients monograph have that section. The FRCs are required to be included in QC testing to control the specific properties, and if these are not included in QC test, then it is very difficult to control those properties. You will not know whether the material is okay or not okay. The material will pass in all the tests, but if it is failing in the FRC test, for example particle size, then it will be given for the batch manufacturing and the batch may fail. The monograph in the pharmacopoeia also enlists the FRCs in the FRC section. FRCs and CMAs are required to be studied in QbD based development and are to be included in the control strategy. From the first day of starting the formulation R&D or research and development, from the first day the material CMAs to be considered, their risk should be evaluated, and based on the risk these CMAs are required to be studied in details. The PDR, that is product development report, to be prepared, and it should be as per the ICH Q8 guideline requirements. ICH Q8 guideline is there for pharmaceutical development, and as per that guideline these FRCs are required to be discussed in the PDR. PDR should include the discussion of FRCs and its impact on the CPPs, CQAs as the regulatory requirements for function of each excipient, and how you are going to control that excipient property, because the ultimate role of the pharmaceutical development is to develop a robust, stable, scalable and bioequivalent formulation, or the formulation with the bioavailability requirement. It should be safe and it should be having the required efficacy, and to get the safety and efficacy the FRCs are very important. Control strategy to control the batch to batch variations in the quality parameters of the excipient it is required and it should be there so that the product is robust. Now also one thing I want to include here is that the CMAs impact the CPPs. If you use the material with different PSD from the specification, suppose you are going to use the coarser API or coarser material, then its behavior into the process will be different compared to the micronized grade. So always have a in-depth understanding about the effect of the FRC or CMA on to the CPP and the CQAs of the formulation. The FRC CMA is the property of the material which impacts its functionality. If that property is not there, then its function will be lost. Regulatory queries are asked onto the testing and control of these FRCs and CMAs. If the regulator finds that the FRCs are not adequately controlled and studied, the regulatory authorities nowadays are asking many queries onto the CMAs and FRCs. Purified talc is used as a glidant in oral formulation like tablets and capsules and many more. So PSD and surface area of the talc is the FRC of talc to function as a glidant. So here I have shown you the talcum powder photos, and many of us use the talcum powder for application onto the skin. You think that if that talcum powder is not having that specific smooth nature and that depends on its particle size, it will be very gritty and the person will not be able to use that powder for its intended use. So this is very simple to understand what are the CMAs and what are the CPPs. Another example, if you are using the injectables and if your injectable formulation is too viscous, it will not come out of the syringe. So the material which is making its viscous, its CMA and FRCs are required to be understood. If you are using a cream, face cream, and it is not spreading properly, that means its spreadability is the CQA and it is being affected by the viscosity or stiffness of some of the material in the cream, and that CMA and FRC of that material should be understood. I hope this video will be helpful for you to understand the CMAs and FRCs. It is a part of QbD development and risk assessment for the formulation. Generally, these CMAs and FRCs are asked into the interviews. So this video will help you. Please do like, share and subscribe to Pharma Learning in Depth channel and watch these videos to have good understanding about the topics. Thanks for watching the video.